for joining. The real focus of my discussion today is COOs in tech. I really would like to familiarize more of you with the role, my passion for operations, and to be a resource for you to learn more about this particular role or operations in general. To share a little bit about me, my name is Maria Jones. I've been in operations for over 15 years. I don't want to tell you too much, but right now I have a company called Nerdy Industry, and it's an operations advisory firm for startups and small businesses. Additionally, I'm actually director of the Atlanta chapter of the COO Forum, which is an organization dedicated to peer-to-peer development for the second in command executive at companies. It's a global organization, and I think my intel for that will be monumental to today's discussion. One thing I did want to share with everyone, if you've joined after our initial announcement, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Operations MJ. My link is in the chat. And additionally, we will be having a raffle today. Today's raffle will actually be an exclusive invitation to a COO Forum Atlanta event. It's an organization, again, for peer-to-peer development of COOs. So you'll get an inside peek of some of the challenges with COOs, some of the learnings, and get to learn more about the role itself from COOs specifically. Again, this is an informal chat. So as you have questions, feel free to add them to the chat box. So for today's discussion, we're going to talk about what is operations, who is a COO, what do they do, career paths for COOs, and I'd like to share with you more resources about that particular career choice, and then we'll have our raffle for fun today. So let's talk about operations. Like, what is operations? You're here because it's like, oh, I want to learn about more careers in tech. But from one thing I would like to key everybody into is that every tech company has an operations team. And the operations team is really the how of tech. So how do they get their products out? How do they release their services? How do they become more efficient? Some of the key departments in tech that you will be familiar with and you probably already work in are human resources, facilities, legal, supply chain, compliance is a big one. So if you're interested in a career in tech, one of the things that I'd like to highlight is an easy way to transition to a tech company is if you're not already a technical person who works in IT, you can definitely transition to a mirroring department within a tech firm to get your foot in the door and learn more about the technology companies. Another popular thing in tech is professional services. If you're a consultant, you can go to professional services, implementation that has to do with product delivery and service delivery. So there's a wealth of careers in tech, and you don't necessarily have to be a coder. So that's one of the things that I'd like to call out. Operations is really known as the back office of the business. And so anything you think about that's not front facing, like communications or marketing, is in your operations department. So one of the things I want to call out is the COO position. So what the COO is they are the second in command executive for any organization. They are really the partner in crime to the CEO. And I'd like to call out that COO stands for Chief Operating Officer, and they are the executive leader for the operations department. One of the most famous and notable known COOs today is Sheryl Sandberg, who is COO at Facebook. So if you're not familiar with her, she's very popular. She's written a couple of books, one of them called Lean In, something to just check out. So if you would like to learn more about the role, you can kind of track Sheryl Sandberg just to get a track on her work. But being more familiar, again, there are three pivotal things about COOs that you should know. Firstly, they serve as the second in command executive at a company. So if you think about the COO, it's really the role that is in joint with the CEO. They are a complementary partner. So if you think of Batman and Robin, it's kind of the COO is the Robin. And they're really responsible for bringing the CEO's vision to life at the company. If we're getting back to what I said before, operations is all about how. So if you think about that, the COOs are really the thought leaders on how we deliver our services, how we deliver our products, and how do we do that in an efficient way to make us profitable. Um, the position may have many titles. What you learn about the second in command role, there are a lot of titles out there. So you might see the role as integrator. You may see the role as chief business officer. But the key thing to know about this role is that it is a second in command position to the chief executive officer of every company. Couple of other things to note. For the COO role, there is not one distinct description of the job. And we'll talk about that a little more, but because the role has to be complementary of the CEO, there's always going to be variations in that job description, because what the CEO can't do, the COO must in that second in command position. So that's the first piece. The second piece is they are the innovators of execution. So they're the thought leaders around how do we get this done? How do we be more strategic? How do we be more efficient? How can we do this process quicker without killing everybody in the company? So they think about all of these things, and they're really the person that when the CEO has like, oh, this great idea, this great change, they are the ones to say how that is taken forward. So if you are really a Jill of all trades or a jack of all trades, that's really where you can really have a lot of fun with that. And we'll talk about that. Additionally, they are the wizards of systems and process. And what I mean by wizards, they always are thinking about how do we do this a little bit better? How do we do this a little bit more efficient? How do we give our customers a better experience by delivery of better products and services? And they're also, and most importantly, culture and change leaders. So it's not always about putting the process, creating a process, but how do we put this process in place to really, fundamentally nurture our culture, but bring effective change to our organization. Thirdly, I'd like to talk about the ultimate multitasker. So when you're the COO role, you are the ambulance chaser and the strategic manager and strategic thought leader at the company at the same time. So you would have to have the capability, and they always have the capability of thinking long-term and thinking short-term. So it can be as minute as, oh, we have this equipment that's down. What do we do now until we get new equipment? All the way to, we have something coming new next year. How do we strategically run this particular product or service globally? And so that role, you really have to juggle a lot, and you really have to enjoy that juggling. So I always say, again, that they're a person of all trades, and they are a strategic leader, and they're also an operational master in the sense of they have to know how everything works in a general level. So they're really a generalist of all things. Okay. So I'd like to just dip in and talk a little bit about the career path for a COO role. So one thing I'd like to share with you that any chief operating officer or second in command executive will tell you is to be a generalist. The best career path to a COO role is having variation in your career, working across different segments of the organization and growing your career path that way. Because the COO really needs to be a generalist who services, master of very few segments, but knowing all. So really being aware of all those different areas, learning them constantly, and then really taking their master areas and partnering with people in the organization where they are weak to overall support their strategy. Additionally, there is no traditional path to the COO role. If you meet 5 COOs, they will tell you, oh, I got in, I started doing it this way. I started doing this way. Sometimes it's even as simple as, oh, myself and a colleague started a business. The colleague was more of a visionary and I was a better person at executing. So I assumed the COO role. So there's no traditional path to that role. Some of the common skills that I want everyone to be aware of for COOs that you'll find, and this again is not hard and fast because again, the COO really complements the CEO. So there's no hard and fast quick skills that you can just, oh, I'm going to be a COO if I have these particular roles, because you're going to be complementing the CEO. So a couple of skills that I'd like you to be aware of are change management. Again, that's getting back to affecting change in the organization. Project management. How do I take a process and roll it through to fruition? Very big in the COO space now is diversity. How do I nurture my culture, not only by bringing diversity to our staff, but bringing the views of diversity to our processes? Operations methodology. They're always on the forefront of operational excellence. And that goes to how do we do this better? So some, very key and well known are they have expertise in Six Sigma methodology. They have expertise in Blue Ocean strategy. They have expertise in any other emerging methodology with operations that are come. And that is a continuum of knowledge that they continue to build. Other key areas that are common are supply chain expertise, especially if they're working in manufacturing or bringing in equipment to the business. And last but not least, finance. So they are not into finance equivalent all the time as a chief financial officer, but they have to understand how finance impacts their overall operations. And with this career path, I think the most important thing is if you're interested in that second in command role is really networking and finding a well-matched CEO. Because they say the CEO and COO is quite the partnership, very similar to even if you consider a marriage in a sense. You're working together all the time and you're looking to balance and load and having that healthy relationship. And so it's very important to find a CEO for which you are well matched. And if you're younger in your career and you're very early in your career, keep networking. Meet as many COOs as you can find, because as COOs migrate and they retire, you could possibly serve as the person who takes over their spot. So networking is key with C-suite executives, startup companies and founders. And that's the way that COOs traditionally find their careers. Any questions about that? Okay, very good. We'll move forward. So there are a couple of resources that I'm going to share with you all to learn more about the COO role. I could probably talk about this role for years and years, but I want to provide you some resources that you can utilize to continue your knowledge here. I'm actually going to stick it in the chat box, and then I'm going to talk through each one of them so we can get familiar. And if you have questions, you can feel free to ask those. Okay. So the first book that I'd like to call out to everyone is a very famous book for all COOs. The book is actually called Riding Shotgun, The Role of COO. So when I was speaking to the complementary relationship between COOs and CEOs as it relates to the job description, this particular book really talks about the 7 different typical types of COOs. And so again, there's no hard and fast definition of a COO, but this book, and it is a book, so it really gets into the weeds, and I can show you that here. It's written by authors Nate Bennett and Stephen Miles. It's one that you can check out at your leisure. And I'll put that in the chat. So Alex has a question. Do COOs have to go to grad school and get an MBA, or can they have certifications? No, there is no requirement for grad school, but you do, again, have to have a broad breadth of understanding of various areas. So you will find that a lot of COOs do not have an MBA or grad school education. You'll find that a lot of them don't have certifications. That really goes to, again, each person really understanding and balancing out the work of the COO. But I will say that you have to have a broad breadth of understanding of overall business operations. But how you go about that education really varies quite a bit across all organizations. Alex, does that answer your question? Great question. Any more questions before I move on to the next resource? So with regard to, fantastic. So with regard to education, what I will say is if you're looking to become a COO, really evaluate yourself. And a good resource that you can utilize to evaluate is actually our next book, which is How to Be a Chief Operating Officer. It really talks about the 16 pillars of being a Chief Operating Officer here. And so this is a good book to evaluate if you're not a COO today. If you would like to understand more about where are some areas where I could probably improve my knowledge overall to be better suited for the role. And again, your skills will really be based on the lack of the skills or desired skills of the CEO all the time, oftentimes. So this is a very good book. If you're interested in that, it's written by Jennifer Geary, and it's available at Amazon and other book vendors. The next book that I'd like to talk about as a resource is Rocket Fuel. Now, Rocket Fuel talks a lot about the role of COO as the integrator. And it is really based on a methodology called the Entrepreneurial Operating System, EOS. And this book talks about the relationship between the CEO and the COO. But in this book, it's referenced as the CEO is the visionary and the COO is the integrator. And it really talks about how to massage that relationship to be most successful and most efficient. Next couple of things that I'd like to call out is an article by Robinhood Learn Online called What is a COO? Very popular, also written by Nate Bennett and Stephen Miles. Very short version of Riding Shotgun is Second in Command, the Misunderstood Role of the COO. Another article is The DNA of the COO by Ernst & Young. A podcast where I talk all about operations is called Debunking COO Myths with Maria Jones. So I talk all about that. Lisa Zevi is a video, about 2-minute video on what is the COO. And if you want to learn about what operational excellence foundations are, if you are on LinkedIn, you can check out this particular training by Richard Choa called Operational Excellence Foundations. Any additional questions? We have only about 2 minutes remaining. Okay. So I'll give 1 minute for everyone to submit to the actual raffle. Again, the link is in the chat. Okay. And then we're going to spin the wheel. So thank you all for participating in today's session. If you would like to learn more about operations, feel free to reach out to me. It's a very strong passion of mine. I love to talk about it. So in my role, I actually function as a fractional COO. This is a question online. And so what I do is I actually get to be an innovator of excellence. And so what execution. And so when small business owners come to me, they really don't know what to do with their business. It's something like a hobby that they've started and they haven't been successful at it. They've been very successful at it, but now it's turned into a business. And what I really enjoy is having the ability to create and really do things there. Okay, very good. So we're going to go ahead and spin the wheel here. Okay, I think we've run out of time. So what I will do is for all of you who submitted, I will actually provide information on a video online to show who actually won the raffle. The winner will receive direct email from me on all of the upcoming COO Forum Atlanta events. It's hosted on Eastern Time, mostly online. So if you'd like to join one of those to learn more about operations, I'm happy to do so. Any additional questions before we close? Okay. Fantastic. Well, thank you all so much for joining. I hope you continue to enjoy today's conference. It has been fantastic to be able to chat with you about one of my greatest passions, which is operations. Have a fantastic day.